So the number one secret to couple communication. Before I share with you this number one secret, I want to share with you the number one mistake couples make in communication, which is talking at the wrong time. Talking at the wrong time. Talking at the wrong time is the single most common couple communication error. So I want to give you a few examples of couples talking at the wrong time. Some of these examples come from my own marriage. Early in our marriage, my wife thought I was irresponsible. I preferred to think of myself as generous and fun-loving. I could have had a frying pan thrown at me. I would go out with friends, come home just a few hours late. My wife would greet me at the door. What was the bar bill? Because she knew I'm generous, I like to pay for my friends. And then she would go, let's talk about the budget. And I would be like, the budget? It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm a little tipsy. I don't think we're going to have a good conversation about the budget at 1 o'clock in the morning. But then my wife would go, you never want to talk about the budget. We're talking about the budget now. So it turns out talking about the budget at 1 o'clock in the morning when you've had a little bit too much to drink is the wrong time. That's the wrong time to talk. My wife was justified in her frustration with me, but that was the wrong time for her to push that conversation. Here's a second example of talking at the wrong time. Before we had kids and life was just a little easier, I would notice we had a free weekend, and I would come home on a Friday evening without giving my wife any heads up. And I would walk in the door and go, let's go to Boston. Let's go to Boston for the weekend. I love to travel. I was so in love with my idea of traveling to Boston. It was such a great idea to travel to Boston for the weekend. I just thought my wife was going to bow down in front of me and go, wow, what a beautiful idea, let's go. But instead my wife would go, no, let's stay here, I'll cook you a 5-course meal. I would tell her, you never want to go anywhere. She would tell me, you don't know how to relax. We didn't get to Boston, but also we didn't enjoy the weekend because I would give my wife this thing called the silent treatment for the weekend because I was so upset at her. So it turns out springing a topic on your wife without giving her any heads up to think about it, particularly when she herself was dreaming about a quiet weekend at home, that was the wrong time for me to raise that issue. Here's another example of talking at the wrong time. This example really surprised me. So this couple, new baby, she was in her 30s. She was just not accustomed to being home alone with a baby. She was on maternity leave. For a lot of women, it can be a shock to have a professional job and then be home with a baby for 6 months. So I encouraged the husband, could you please call your wife up during the day? That would be really, you guys are arguing about so many different things. If she heard from you during the day, she might be a little more cheerful in the evening when you came home. And he said, I can't call her during the day. I mean, he was just so passionate that he couldn't do it. I was like, whoa, why can't you call her? And he goes, well, I'll call her up to ask how she's doing, and then she'll start asking me, what shade of blue do you think we should paint the baby's room? And I just don't have the time for that conversation when I'm at work. So that's her mistake, to bring up all these extraneous topics when he's calling from work. That's the wrong time to talk about the shade of blue you want the baby's room to be when it's a work phone call. A few more examples. I work with a couple. He's a hockey player for the New York Rangers, and the games tend to be at night. He's all wound up when he comes home, and he would walk in the door, and she would greet him, how was the game? How was the game? By a rather reasonable question, but he would just blow up. shocked at being asked how the game was, and she got so freaked out that she fled the apartment and would wander the streets of Manhattan by herself, essentially at midnight after every New York Ranger home game. So I had to tell her it's well-intentioned to ask him how the game went. To ask that when he's all wound up and walking in the door is just the wrong time to ask that question. But I did tell him to stop before he opened the door, walk in a little gentler, but I did tell her, don't even ask him anything. Smile at him. The next morning, ask him how the game went. But asking, when he's all wound up, it's just the wrong time to talk, wrong time to talk. Here's one of my favorite couples from Italy. I met them, very sweet couple. The first sentence they told me when I met them, Peter, we love each other, we're afraid to marry each other. We're both so hot-blooded. The smallest of issues quickly escalates. We start screaming at each other. We scream at each other in public. They told me it was humiliating to have a fight on the streets of New York, and you know it's a stupid, we said we even know it's a stupid argument, but we can't stop ourselves. So having a stupid argument on the sidewalk of New York, it's the wrong time to talk. It's the wrong time to talk. I could give you so many more examples, but the single most common couple communication error is talking at the wrong time. It's the single most common couple communication error. So when is the wrong time to talk? When you're tired, hungry, stressed, it's the wrong time to talk. I told my wife when I'm at work, do not call me up unless it's totally urgent. I'll fully admit I'm a huge football fan. My wife is not even allowed to kiss me when the game is on, let alone talk to me. We have an agreement if one of us had even one drink, it is not the time to raise relationship issues. It's a time to relax and have fun. But let's talk when we're sober. That's a good idea, by the way. It is not the right time to talk when you're angry and frustrated with each other. The research is when you get angry, your blood pressure goes up, and it literally becomes impossible to have a rational conversation. So if you talk when you're frustrated and angry, the chance that the conversation is productive is near zero. And frankly, it's wrong to talk about things if you haven't given the other a heads up. Let's go to Boston. I gave my wife zero advance notice that I would be proposing that. So what is the solution? If talking at the wrong time is the single most common couple communication error, what is the number one secret to great couple communication? And the secret is, don't spring conversations on each other. Don't force conversations. Couples should get in the habit of giving each other a heads up and scheduling their conversations at a time that works for both of you. So the number one secret to great couple communication is scheduling the conversation. Now, there are different types of scheduled conversation. One I call formal scheduling. For example, the budget. So my wife and I did really struggle with communication early in our marriage. But then oddly enough, I was asked to become a pre-Cana marriage preparation teacher because I was such an expert. But that really spurred me to do my homework to be a good teacher. And read the research on marriage. So we then both read it and agreed to not, discuss the budget at 1 a.m. in the morning. So here's what happened the next time I spent too much money. A near weekly occurrence. My wife, what's this box from Amazon doing here? But instead of pushing me, she said, when can we talk about the budget? When can we talk about the budget? So my favorite question my wife asked me is, when can we talk? So I said, how about Sunday at 4 p.m.? We'll talk Sunday at 4 p.m. rather than the heat of the moment. I kept my promise, and we started to really make progress on our finances. I stand before you now as still fun-loving, but also responsible. And a lot of it is, the credit is given because we learned how to constructively work through issues. So I'm a big fan of formal scheduling. Let's talk Sunday at 4 p.m. For some issues, it's not necessary to have formal scheduling. I like to throw parties, and my wife likes to cook. So she would think of the menu for the dinner party. I have a home office, but my wife had this bad habit of just kind of bursting into my home office. Let's talk about the menu for the dinner party. Well, it's a happy topic, but she brought it up at the wrong time almost every single time. And I'd be frustrated. I'm trying to write a complicated email right now, or I'm trying to do this or that. And then she'd get angry at me. This is your party. You don't want to talk about the menu? So even a happy topic can lead to frustration and anger. So in this type of topic, we do what's called informal scheduling. My wife will come in. Hey, would love to talk about the menu for the dinner party with you. When can we talk? Hey, can you just let me finish this email, and then I'll come track you down and we'll talk about it then. Boy, that gives me a chance to finish what I'm doing, which is important, but then it gives me a few minutes to get myself in the zone. Maybe a friend coming over has a food allergy. I should think of things like that before we consider the menu. So for some topics, we do what I call informal scheduling. Hey, can I just take a shower? And then we can talk if it's the summertime, and then we'll have a nicer conversation. Now here's a special form of a scheduled conversation, and that's the time out. So over here on the side table, I have for you to take, if you like, for your refrigerator door, my rules for how to call a timeout effectively. And there is a step-by-step process. Actually, I initially did this as a gift for the Italian couple that fought on the sidewalks of New York, because I really did like them. Come on in. But they need a little help getting the timeouts working. So the timeout is, the key about a timeout is the anger's already up here. You feel this urge to talk about the topic, but it's the wrong time to talk about the topic. So the key is you need to depressurize the situation. You absolutely need to depressurize the situation. But I told the Italian couple that they should call timeouts, but they called me 1 week later. Peter, you need to come back. The timeouts aren't working. I asked them what they were doing, and here's what they told me. Here's how we're calling timeouts. This is what Peter was talking about. You are literally crazy right now. We need a timeout. And I was like, well, you're right. She might be literally crazy, but pointing that out is not helpful. So the key to calling a timeout that works is to have a pre-agreed humorous signal. So this Italian couple both said at the same time, we think the word spaghetti is funny. So I'm like, great. So the next time maybe she gets a little crazy, don't tell her she's crazy. Start screaming spaghetti. Then I told them I just hopped on a train, 100-mile round trip from where I live to meet with you guys on an emergency basis. I don't want to do this every week. So I made them practice in front of me for half an hour calling timeouts. Spaghetti, spaghetti alla marinara, spaghetti alla bolognese, spaghetti, just keep going through the list of spaghettis. Nothing good happens when you're angry. Nothing good happens when you're angry. So you've got to be radically committed to just stopping the anger. The couple has never called back, by the way. That's a good sign, by the way. But in our own marriage, one of my humorous signals is, illegal initiation of late night conversation, 15-yard penalty. I used to tell my wife, do we have to talk about this now, late at night? And then my wife would get further upset at me. So we have a pre-agreed humorous signal. If my wife ever starts a conversation late at night when we're tired, we have to stop. We have to stop. So the key is when the frustration and anger is building, you need a humorous way of depressurizing the situation. The signal is funny because you know that the very next thing you're going to do is set a time to talk. It's very calming to set a time. Now we know we're not ignoring the issue. We know when we're going to talk about it. The tension goes down. Then I advocate as the third step. Come on in. I advocate as the third step of calling a timeout affection. Believe it or not, my wife and I dance instead of fighting. So we'll have our humorous signal, we'll set a time, and then I'll go to her, come here. Not the most romantic dance, but it's better than yelling. But that affection shows, yes, I'm angry, but the love is stronger than the anger. So there is a right way to call a timeout, there's a wrong way to call a timeout. But timeouts, Dr. Gottman found 94% of couples need to learn to call timeouts. It's a miracle how well they work. So another form of a scheduled conversation, and this is if you want to be really good at marriage. If you want to be really good at marriage, I advocate that couples call preemptive timeouts. Preemptive timeouts. So what's a preemptive timeout? That's predicting the fight and calling the timeout before the fight even begins, and solving the problem before it even happens. To give you an example, so I do like to read the research on marriage, and couples with young children argue and bicker 8 times more often than couples without young children. I'm reading that as we're about to adopt a baby. Further, it turns out women are 50 times more likely to hear the cry of a baby in the middle of the night than a man is. And I was like, oh my goodness, my wife hates to be tired. And we're about to have a baby. This is going to be tough. Our baby was born at the beginning of football season. So I had this vision that I'm going to be wanting to watch a football game. My wife hasn't slept in weeks because of the baby, and there are dishes to be done in the sink. And I predicted that my wife would not let me watch the football game in peace if there were dishes in the sink that needed to be cleaned. So rather than waiting for my wife to get upset at me, we held a preemptive timeout. But I agreed to always do the grocery shopping so she can get some naps. I already agreed in a previous timeout to always take out the trash, always take care of the laundry. But we did agree to switch to paper plates for 6 months. So I told my wife, I just have visions of us arguing over dishes on an almost daily basis. And there's just so much to do. We can't be perfect at everything. And my wife is a purist, but she said to me, okay, but only for 6 months. And every time I saw those paper plates quickly go in the trash, I was like, that's another argument avoided. And I was able to watch football in peace. So that was a big one. But to see the argument, I'm a believer that 90% of couple issues are predictable. And if you can just see it coming and solve it before it happens, that's if you want to be really good at marriage. But another example of a scheduled conversation, which I love, is to have at least one weekly time set aside to just truly catch up with each other. I failed an Argentinian couple 3 times from pre-Cana for excessive fighting in front of me. They would not stop arguing and bickering. They told me they bickered all the time. Bickering is the leading cause of divorce for couples married less than 7 years. So I urged them, guys, you have stressful jobs. Your home should be a source of a refuge, not a source of additional stress. So I ordered them to have a regular Saturday morning cup of coffee for airing of grievances, and at all other times of the week, they had to enjoy each other's company. So they developed the humorous signal, save it for Saturday. Peter says we have to enjoy each other's company. And I met them the fourth time, and they were just so happy and relaxed together. But my wife and I had our weekly date this morning. We have weird work schedules. I often work on weekends. So we have a tradition to have a Monday morning date to kind of just catch up with each other, talk things out. And if we did not have that weekly time set aside, we could potentially go weeks without really truly talking to each other. Issues could build up, and that's just not good. I'm a strong advocate that couples should set aside at least once a week as a set time to really catch up and talk with each other. So those are examples of scheduled timeouts, scheduled discussions. So how can couples find the right time to talk? Are you ready for a completely simple marriage advice that'll absolutely transform your marriage? Ask your partner, when can we talk? I would like to discuss this topic with you. When can we talk about it? So the rule in our marriage is ask once, never make the other person ask twice. My poor wife sometimes had to ask me 10 times to talk about things. Can we talk about the budget now? How about now? No. Later. So that's frustrating for everybody involved. So ask once, never make the other person ask twice. Look at the calendar if you need to. Commit to a specific time. Keep your promise. But I never promise to talk to my wife after work. I don't know when I'm getting home. There's a good chance I'll be tired. I'll talk before I leave or a day we're not working. And then I can keep my promise and we have a chance for a really good conversation. So the number one secret to great couple communication is to schedule the conversation. So now I'm going to quickly go through 14 reasons why scheduling conversations is an absolutely brilliant thing to do. Number one, pick the right time when you're not tired, stressed, distracted. Just this alone improves the quality conversation amazingly. Number two, turn off distractions. My wife used to complain that I was on my phone when she was talking to me. I'm sure I was actually already on my phone when she started talking to me. So, whose fault is that really in the end? So if you randomly spring a conversation on the other person, the chances are they're already distracted. And then you can't complain if they're not listening. But if you can say, hey, when can we talk? Okay, let's talk Thursday at 7. Then we can both show up Thursday at 7 with everything turned off, fully present with each other. That's the second reason why scheduling conversations is so key. Third, you give each other time to prepare. My wife and I discovered we literally have thoughtful conversations if they're scheduled. The word thoughtful means full of thought. Even happy topics need time to prepare. I love to travel, but if my wife were to ask me right now, Peter, where would you like to travel over the summer? I would not be ready for that conversation. But if she said, hey, I'd really like us to discuss our plans for the summer, when could we discuss the plans for the summer? I would say, hey, how about Sunday at 4 p.m.? Then I'd have a whole week to look at the map, talk to people, hey, any good ideas for me? It's just amazing. The quality of conversation goes way, way up if you give each other time to prepare. Big controversial topics definitely need time to prepare. The budget. We did set, let's talk Sunday at 4 p.m. to discuss the budget. That time to prepare made us realize this is a really big undertaking. Maybe we should start tracking our spending. If we're going to have a budget, we need to have data. My wife and I actually ended up making a commitment to meet once every 2 months for a whole year to be completely transparent about what we had spent in the last 2 months. We were not allowed to criticize each other, but we set up a process, a structured process to communicate over the course of the year and then arrive at a really good budget after 1 year. But it took structure to the communication for us to make that great progress. So giving time to prepare is key. A fourth reason. To my surprise, when we started scheduling conversations, I realized that I didn't even truly understand what I wanted. To take one example, I would come home and go, let's go to Boston for the weekend. We actually did call a timeout about my desire to go to Boston. And in the timeout, I realized I really wanted to go to Boston and had no idea why. My wife used to ask me, well, why do you want to go to Boston? What's in Boston? Fenway Park? I don't even particularly like baseball that much. So I even knew that's not the real reason. It took me 40 minutes in a timeout to discover why I wanted to go to Boston. And I discovered I feel most alive when I'm exploring cities. I just love exploring cities and towns. I'm an urban explorer. That's why I want to go to Boston. And if I don't get a chance to explore cities, I start to shrivel up and die. And I remember getting excited. Now I understand myself. I can share myself with my wife, and she might even agree to go to Boston. So one reason that scheduling conversations is great is it gives you a chance to understand yourself better. But number 5 reason to schedule conversation, it gives you a chance to understand your spouse better. So I discovered I am not a good listener. My wife could have told you that earlier. But I find I have to emotionally prepare to be a better listener. I need to emotionally prepare to be a better listener. If you just spring a topic on me, it turns out I tend to be stubborn. I know what I like. But if you give me time to prepare, I do what I call pre-empathize. Okay, Peter, now you know why you want to go to Boston, but your wife's a good person. If she doesn't want to go to Boston, it's probably not because she's evil. She probably has a valid point. But this is one of the most important things I learned from Dr. Gottman's research. So Dr. Gottman has a famous love lab. He brings couples in, hooks them up to measure their heart rate and blood pressure. Then he instigates fights between the couples in his love lab. So the true test of love: do you love someone if you disagree with them? Do you love someone if you disagree with them? So Dr. Gottman actually puts your relationship under stress in the love lab to see just how loving you truly are. I would have failed the love lab. Turns out I love my wife when she agrees with me. But, you know, when she did not want to go to Boston, like a truly loving husband would have been like, oh, why? Tell me, you know. But I was like, no, you're you never want to go anywhere. You're no fun. That's not a loving response. So Dr. Gottman found from his observation that when couples disagree, they're almost always both right. So the key to a great conversation is believing you both have a valid point. So one of the steps of a timeout is to remind yourself that your spouse is a good person. And if they're disagreeing with you, it's probably not because they're evil. It's probably because they have a valid point. So this is a big benefit of scheduling conversations, is I can then look at the issue sympathetically from my wife's point of view. But my wife's words to me were, let's relax here at home, I'll cook you a 5-course meal. That's what she always told me. What I heard her say is, I don't want to go to Boston, I don't want to travel. But when I calmed down and actually considered what she was saying, she never said she doesn't want to travel. She says she likes to relax and cook. But I discovered that I'm an urban explorer and my wife is a culinary explorer. If I have a free weekend, I want to get out and explore towns and cities. If she has a free weekend, she wants to try cooking some new cuisines. Those are equally valid pursuits. I can't say one's better than the other. So Dr. Gottman found the key to great conversation is believing you both have a valid point. So scheduling conversations allows us to see the good in each other's point of view, which brings me to one of the best reasons to schedule conversations. And that is, you get to enjoy deeper intimacy as a couple if you schedule conversations. I was blown away how I could be so angry at my wife, you never want to go anywhere. And then thanks to a 3-hour timeout, I have a deeper understanding of her, appreciation, and she has a deeper understanding of me. We realize we're both good people. And wow, I mean, it was like the difference of 3 hours. 3 hours, I thought she was the worst person in the world. Now I think she's kind of interesting. Hey, wow, she likes to cook new and different things. So we enjoy deeper intimacy as a couple when we schedule conversations. 7, scheduling conversations is a brilliant way of overcoming stubbornness. I find our problem solving is so much more creative when we set a time to talk. And this is one of my favorite examples. So it was like, let's go to Boston, no, let's stay home. Let's go to Boston, no, let's stay home. The solution is, we travel, but instead of staying in hotels, we rent apartments with kitchens. When we get there, my wife can do what she loves so much, which is to relax and cook and try new and different things. And I can explore while she's cooking. So Dr. Gottman found there's always a win-win solution. There's always a win-win solution. If couples are in a stubborn stalemate, there is always a win-win solution. You just need to create a structure of creative problem solving. So scheduling conversations allows you to do that. If you just...
I want to say thank you.
Oh, good, thank you, no problem, yep. Another reason to schedule conversation is to harness anger. So before I got in this work, I thought that anger was a bad thing. Certainly looking at my family, a frying pan flying through the air, it did seem like anger was a bad thing. But it turns out that anger is normal and potentially great if you harness the anger and use it for good. So the timeouts allow you to harness anger. I was angry at my wife because she didn't want to go to Boston. But instead of yelling at her and being frustrated at her, I allowed myself to calm down, and then I used that anger to really motivate myself to find, is there a solution? Is there a deeper understanding? So conflict is actually good. Anger can be a source of really a good source in marriage, but couples just don't know how to harness anger for good. So scheduling conversations allows you to take that energy and actually channel it in a positive direction. Scheduling conversations allows you to overcome conflict avoidance. I was definitely conflict avoidant. I would just shut down and wouldn't share with my wife. Who wants to talk to a woman who's like, it looks like she's about to bite your head off? So let's talk Monday morning at 7:30 a.m. Let's have a mutual commitment to be calm and thoughtful and constructive. Then I'm not avoiding the conversation. I'm actually looking forward to it. Key point. Dr. Gottman found that 4% of conversations that begin on a negative note, only 4% of conversations that begin on a negative note end in a positive way. So how you start a conversation turns out to be really important. I do recommend reading Dr. Gottman's books. They're filled with actual examples. Here's what the couple said, here's what they could have said. So during a timeout, one of the steps is, now that I maybe have a deeper understanding, what's the right words to choose to get the conversation started? For example, to take our Boston discussion as an example, I could have started the conversation you do know that I want to go to Boston. And if I had started it that way, the research is my wife would have immediately stopped listening to me. There he goes again, he only cares about what he wants. So instead, I started the conversation, I finally realized you love to cook. I showed my wife I was finally listening to her. And she's like, oh, maybe I'll start to listen to him. And then, hey, I love to travel and explore. What about this as an idea? And my wife's like, that's great, let's do it. So how you start a conversation really determines how it goes. There's a few more. Defensiveness. Defensiveness is a big issue in marriage. I met a couple. I asked the guy how he'd like his, bride to change. And he's like, she's just so defensive, I can't even talk to her. So I said to him, would you like to know the cure for defensiveness? He's like, yes! The cure for defensiveness is stop attacking her. It was not the answer he was looking for, by the way. He was not happy with that answer. But that is the answer. So my wife and I make an absolute commitment, zero criticism in our marriage. Dr. Gottman found from his research that criticism is usually accurate, but almost never helpful. But it's lazy to be a critic. There is always a positive way to make your point. Always a positive way. Might sound radical, zero criticism, but here's the Harvard Business Review. Why feedback fails, criticizing people doesn't help them excel, there's a better way. So my wife and I made a commitment to always be constructive when we talk. Always be constructive. Scheduling conversations allows you to pick the right place. They found couples communicate best when they get out of the house. Go for a walk. Even better, a walk in nature. So my wife and I have really used that little tidbit to have some of the best conversations in our marriage. We're getting to the end here. Many good couples, my wife and I felt the same way, live in fear of their next fight. Many couples live in fear of their next fight. My wife and I we never threw anything at each other. We never yelled really that big. But I would shut down regularly and give her the silent treatment. We both kind of lived in fear of our next little fight because the awkwardness it would create between us. So to have a system in place that it's never going to get to that point, that there's always a way to have a constructive conversation. We have not lived in fear of our next fight in 18 years. So to have that peace and confidence, we can discuss any topic. We really feel we can discuss any topic. And that's a great thing to feel in marriage. So the last thing why I advocate scheduling conversations, I was usually not cheerful when my wife tried to talk to me. In fact, my wife used to circle around me like a shark. Okay, I want to talk to him, but he looks a little, if I talk to him now, he'll probably snap at me. Seeing my wife circle around me like a shark was not helping me relax, by the way. But when we use this system of scheduling conversations, my wife and I made a commitment to always be cheerful when we talk. Always be cheerful. Always be cheerful. There are topics I really don't want to talk about, like housework. But I told my wife, I will cheerfully discuss housework. If you give me a heads up, I can see it coming. I know we need to get better at it. So my wife is never afraid to talk to me. So many couples, they give up the idea of even talking to each other. There's no use to talk anymore. It's just going to lead to an argument. What's the point of it? We were trending in that direction, to be honest, of like, what's the point of even bringing things up? So now to know that you can talk about anything and that it's going to be a cheerful conversation, even if it's a difficult topic. Marriage is for life. It's kind of nice to know that you can talk about anything in a cheerful way for the next 40 years. And so that's my advocacy for scheduling conversations. It really gives couples so many positives. So I do want to send you time for questions and then socializing, but I do want to give you guys a homework assignment. So also on the table there is an exercise I will encourage in every single talk I give couples to do, what I call creating a shared vision in marriage. What are your dreams for yourself, your marriage, your family life, each other? I urge you all to schedule a conversation with your partners, hypothetically next Sunday, not for life, but what would you like to do this coming summer? What would you like to do this coming summer? Use it as an experiment, and give each other 5 days to think about it. And then say, let's talk at Sunday at 4, whatever works for you. And then just see, like, wow, we were ready to talk, the phones were away, we both came with some fun ideas, there's new enthusiasm for our future. So that's your homework assignment, is to schedule a conversation with your partner. What would you like to do this coming summer? Enter that conversation with a spirit of being open to the other's ideas, and trying to find a win-win solution for the summer. So does anyone have any questions about anything? Yes, please.
When you schedule a discussion, have you found it useful to put a time limit on it?
Like how long the discussion lasts? Well, let me answer that. I'll answer that in a few different ways. One is, like for some couples, I've met a few couples where cutting each other off can be a problem. So I do urge some couples to put a timer out for 10 minutes. You get to talk and I will not interrupt you. That's very helpful for a lot of couples. My wife and I even had conversations where I told my wife, let's go for a walk Saturday morning and I'm only going to listen to you because clearly I don't understand you. And if there's research that if you respond too quickly to what the other person says, it means you did not listen. So if you're like responding quickly, you're not listening. So I told my wife, next Saturday, it's all going to be just your point of view. I'm not even going to challenge. I might ask some questions to see if I can understand better, but I'm just going to really try to reflect deeper what it is that you really want. And then the next time we talk, I'll have a response after letting it sink in. So sometimes we do that. Now, if we have a conversation and it starts to go in the wrong direction, immediately call a timeout. Immediately. I once even looked at my wife. Make an appointment before she even opened her mouth. But the key is the commitment. But it's one very important thing is to give each other enough time to prepare, so that you can be truly constructive, truly thoughtful, truly open to the other. But this is such a key point, to see the best in the other person, to really see the best in the other person. One of the most important steps of a timeout is to remind yourself you married a good person. And if you really reflect on that and remember that, it's so much easier to talk about things. But if a conversation starts to go in the wrong direction, call it timeout immediately. Immediately, and then set a time. But and if you need to read some books, which I did, I personally needed to read a few books to learn the skill of expressing myself in a constructive way. I think that could be helpful to do. Anyway, does that answer your question? Yep. Okay. Any other questions or thoughts? Anyone else?
What is the book that you recommend?
So I recommend, this is the first one from Dr. Gottman that I would recommend. It's called The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. There's another book called Why Marriages Succeed or Fail. I'll leave it here if you want to take a look at it. But it's very readable. I was even laughing at times because there's some good anecdotes. And he's a real humanitarian. If I were giving out Nobel Prizes, I would give one to him. So let's see if I can show you Dr. Gottman, just if the Wi-Fi is working here. Oh, it's not. I have a website, a blog, marriagefund101.com. I actually have some short videos from him on the blog where you can kind of see him in action. Yes? Did you? Oh, me too. Any other questions? Yes, please.
So aside from the scheduling,
Yeah.
which I get, I would like to hear your opinion on just day-to-day living. Like, how do you practice not, I call it being bitey, like,
Good.
life's work.
Okay, good.
That sort of just pinchy.
Good. Very good question. Very good question, actually. So Dr. Gottman found, but this is actually, I had a couple that was going to divorce each other. Actually, I'll share this story. It's such a great story. So this couple calls me up on a Monday. We need marriage counseling. I show up to meet them Wednesday night. Like, very sharply dressed, completely successful couple, married 3 years. And they tell me, Peter, we realize we don't need marriage counseling. Our problem is we're just two bad people, and you can't make a good relationship out of two bad people. I was like, I read about bad people in the New York Post. You guys are not bad people. But then I asked them, what's the problem? And the wife goes, what's the problem? I've told him 100 times to put the toothpaste cap back on and he won't do it. So the research from Dr. Gottman is, the key to a happy marriage is the ratio of positivity to frustration in marriage, or your interactions. The ratio of positive to negative interactions. If you're bickering all the time about toothpaste caps and not saying thank you, you're going to blow up at everything, it turns out. So I ordered them to take a one-night vacation from bickering, to go home, 10 minutes in quiet reflection, to thank each other for their to think about the positive qualities, to verbally thank each other out loud. They emailed me the following morning, thank you so much, we forgot we loved each other. So if you don't want to blow up, the key is you need to turn the beat around. You need to start saying thank you every day. I did give some talks here earlier in March. They're on my website, you can listen to them. How to have a joyful marriage. But my wife and I made a commitment to always dance with each other when we greet each other. We end every day by saying thank you. Start every day in a positive note. So if you can build up the positive side of your marriage, you're not going to be quick to blow up about something that's not done. So Dr. Gottman found that when couples argue, the issue is an issue. The guy forgot to put the toothpaste cap back on. That really did happen. But the real explanation for the anger is where the relationship was heading into that issue. So you got to build up your issue, you build up the positivity in your marriage so that you're not prone to blowing up quickly. Anyway, yeah. And anyway, a lot of practical advice in that one, but that's another talk. But any other thoughts or questions? All right, I don't know about you guys. I'm getting a beer, but you're welcome to stay if you need to go. And Father, I have a couple that wants to say hello to you too, so we have to make a connection here. But any other thoughts or questions before we? Yep, O'Malley.
When I walk in the door,
Yeah.
before I walk in the door, what do I have to do?
You have to stop. The single best discipline I've developed in marriage is to stop before I open the door. Peter, you're about to greet her by 9 out of 10 times. I'm tired by the time I get home. There's occasionally crankiness. Sometimes I'm frustrated with my wife. I used to walk in, expressing that and dragging our marriage down. So the single best discipline is to stop before you open the door. Remind yourself, I'm about to greet my wife. Put some positive energy into this. How you greet each other sets the tone for your marriage and family life. But so over on that table, I have my new business cards. And for years, I thought I could summarize my entire essential advice for marriage in the back of one business card. And I successfully did it. So, by the way, if you can do these 3 things on this business card, your chance of a happy marriage is outstanding. And I did none of these 3 things. They're all 3 things I had to learn to do. So, yes?
All right, so I met with him before because you invited me tonight,
Yeah.
and I had heard this before. I live with my wife, we have a mother who has Alzheimer's. The same 15 questions every single day, 70 times a day. You're just going out of your mind.
Yeah.
So I know walking in the door, it's going to be like, here we go again. All right. So we chatted. So I have, as you said,
Yeah.
find your thing. Take the key before you put the door in. The key, John, is to smile at the 70th time she's going to ask you the same question. Put the key in the door. Sure as shit, the same questions come in. It's just it's Alzheimer's. But you know the difference is
Yeah.
now?
What?
We're going with a smile. So I say, okay, great. You know, every day is a new. Every 20 minutes is a new
Yeah.
month.
Yeah.
But when I see my wife,
Yeah.
at least I'm smiling before I walk in the door. It's made a difference. I have to. That's why.
Cool. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I
Thank
really
you.
mean it, because it was
Yeah.
driving me.
Yeah.
I would drink 6 of these. Before that was every single day. I go and I go, okay,
Yeah.
I know the question's coming. I have 2 choices: get angry, or as you said to me,
Yeah.
smile.
Yeah.
So when I walk in the door, same questions coming out. Oh, okay, how's your day? Oh, it's great. Blah blah blah. In the meantime, I'm like, it's a lot easier.
Yep.
But I gotta stop before I open that door.
Stopping before you open the door.
I really do. It's coming. It's
Yeah.
gonna come tell me.
Yep. Yep.
I have to just deal with it. And,
Yeah.
But you're right. If you handle it, it's like scheduling. I
Yeah.
think I'm sitting here, I'm listening to like schedule. The questions come.
Yeah.
Just it's coming. So I have 2 choices: handle it right,
Yeah.
or get angry at it.
Exactly.
I got tired of being angry at it because it's just screwing everything up.
Exactly.
And when he said to me last night, just you put the key in the door. The first question is, you know, it's going to be nice.
Yep. Yep.
I have to admit, it really does.
Good.
Now, it doesn't mean that 70 times here the same 15 questions.
Exactly.
I mean, it really is.
By the way, on that note, you know, we suffer from infertility, which is just one of the most painful things a couple can suffer from. 4 years of it. You know, my wife was distraught, is an understatement. And so every night I knew I was going home to a depressed wife who was probably going to cry for hours. But stopping before I opened the door. Peter, you made a promise before God, family, and friends to love your wife in good times and in bad. Now is the time to keep that promise. And then it changes everything. So it's just a powerful. So thank you for sharing. Any other questions or whatever? All right, guys. Well, thank you all.